You can learn a lot about someone by playing tennis with them. I have found that as a general rule, those guys who are gentlemen on the tennis court are just as gentlemanly in their lives off the court. Conversely, I've watched a guy display the worst decency I've ever seen while playing with his best friend. It didn't surprise me later when this guy abandoned his family and ran off with another man's wife. And then there's Frank Calhoun. Frank is a big guy. In fact, he played soccer at Georgia Tech until he broke his knee. After an orthopedic surgeon repaired it, Frank switched to tennis. In doing so, he played tennis like a soccer player, making powerful serves and shooting the player at the net from the baseline. But I could beat him. I like to come to the net and put pressure on him to hit shots at me. He usually hit it too high and the ball would fly off to the side fence. And don't say I provoked him. Let's just say I made him hesitate when he hit. As a result, Frank always wanted to play me. He just couldn't stand losing to the little guy. Actually, I'm not small. In fact, I'm 5'2", but I'm quite thin and wiry, which makes me small compared to Frank, who is 7.5 centimeters taller and 34 kilograms heavier than me. Unsurprisingly, I don't have much desire to play with Frank, but it's hard to avoid him because we both live in the Eden Point neighborhood north of Atlanta. Since Atlanta is kind of a big tennis town, our section was built around a clubhouse with a pool and lots of tennis courts. With so many people playing on Atlanta Lawn Tennis Association league teams, it's pretty hard to avoid someone like Frank. But the good news was that I also get to play with a lot of really good people, like my mixed doubles partner, Penny Pennington. I met Penny through my wife, Melanie. Melanie is a Pilates instructor, and many people who live in Eden Point take classes at her studio, including Penny. Unfortunately for me, Melanie doesn't like tennis, but when she found out that Penny was looking for a partner, she introduced me to her and Penny, and I have been playing together for about a year now. The club we were playing in today's match was quite far away in Stone Mountain, so I suggested that Penny come with me to save gas. With traffic getting heavy on Saturday afternoons, we planned a 45-minute drive to get there. As she walked out the front door, I wondered again why Penny was still single. Part of the reason was that she had lost her husband in an automobile accident 3 years ago. After a long period of mourning, one way she dealt with her grief was to join Melanie's Pilates class. Another way was to get back into tennis, which she had played in high school. The result of all this physical activity was a trim, slender, dark-haired woman in her early 30s. I expected a woman as beautiful as Penny to attract suitors like flies to honey, but she kept telling Melanie she just hadn't found the right man. "Hey, Penny," I said hello to her as she opened my car door. "Are you ready to beat them up today?" She grinned at me. "I bet you are, Michael. I've been looking forward to a rematch with them for a long time." As I pulled onto the I-285 freeway, we were talking about our strategy for the match, but I was interrupted by my cell phone ringing. "Hey, Robert, are you kidding me?" "No, everything is great here." "Shit. Okay, we'll reschedule." Penny looked at me questioningly as I turned off at the next exit and headed home. "That was our opponent," I told her. "He said it had just rained, and it was impossible to play on the courts. Atlanta is known for localized downpours that can flood one area of the city, while just a few miles away the sun shines brightly." Penny was visibly disappointed. "Heck, I really wanted to play tonight." "Look," I said, "why don't we go back to the clubhouse? We can practice, and maybe there'll be someone there who wants to play." As I pulled up to the main entrance of Eden Point, I turned onto the road leading to my house. "I want to stop for a minute and pick up my check for the club dues for this quarter," I told Penny. "I'll be there in a minute." I parked at the curb and rushed to the front door. I'd written the check last night and left it on the dresser, so I knew where to find it. But walking down the hallway, I heard sounds coming from the master bedroom, sounds I wasn't supposed to hear. "Oh, please, do it again. Yes, like this." "Oh!" It was Melanie's voice. "What the hell?"
I tiptoed down the hallway and peeked through the door. Melanie was lying naked on the bed, her legs spread wide apart. A man was squatting between them, and she was moaning and awing.
I felt like I was in a car accident. I was stunned. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Everything suddenly changed, and I couldn't understand what was happening. No, this can't be happening, I thought, recognizing the figure of Frank Calhoun. I heard her moan as he slid into her. Then she started chanting, "Oh, God. Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, God." I recoiled from the door as if I'd been punched. It was unbearable. My first impulse was to burst into the room and pounce on him. But what good would that do? I asked myself in despair. She's already cheated on me. Fighting him won't change that. Besides, even if I get in with the first punch, he's much bigger than me and could still beat me to a pulp. But I don't want him to avoid that. Standing there, I suddenly remembered that Penny was waiting in the car. Oh, shit. I need to get her home first, then I can come back here to face them, I thought. I found myself walking back down the hallway in a daze and out of the house. I felt like I might vomit at any second. I looked up and saw Penny looking at me through the car window. After a moment, I climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. I don't know how I looked, but apparently not too good. "Are you okay, Michael?" Penny asked anxiously, looking at me. I couldn't speak. I gripped the steering wheel as tightly as I could, steering the car toward Penny's house. When I stopped, I put the car in park and said without looking at her, "I'm sorry, Penny, but I won't be able to play with you today." "What's wrong, Michael?" "What's wrong?" she asked with growing concern. When I didn't answer, she reached over and turned off the ignition, then pulled out her keys and took them with her, walking out and to my door. I turned to her. "I've got to go, Penny. Please give me the keys back." "No," she said firmly, "not until you tell me what happened." When I didn't say anything, she opened the car door and pulled me by the arm. "You're not going anywhere until you get inside and tell me what's going on." Hey, like a robot, I got out of the car and let her take me to my house. She disappeared for a second and came back with a glass of ice water. I automatically tasted it while she looked at me. When I set the glass down, she took my hand and squeezed it in hers. "Tell me, Michael, what happened in there?" Suddenly, all my resistance was gone, and I leaned back against the back of her couch. I tried to speak, but my throat suddenly constricted again, so I took another sip of water. "It was Melanie and Frank," I said in a strained tone. She looked at me incomprehensively. "Come on," she said. "They were there together in our bedroom. They were—" My voice trailed off. She gasped. "No, that can't be. Melanie would never do that." The image of the two of them came back to me with full force, and I felt a tear run down my face. "I thought so too," I wheezed as the pain in my throat intensified. "Couldn't it have been something else, Michael? You couldn't have been mistaken?" she asked. I knew she was trying to help, but it didn't keep me from being angry. When I looked inside, she was lying on her back and Frank was licking her. "So you're telling me, Penny, that I was wrong?" She flinched at my angry sarcasm. "I'm so sorry, Michael. I wasn't doubting you. I was just hoping there might be some other explanation." I was pierced with more pain. "And of all people with Frank Calhoun," I said angrily, "how could she let that big baboon get close to her?" "I guess that explains why Frank started taking Pilates lessons from Melanie," Penny pondered aloud. "He was taking lessons from her?" I yelled. "She never told me about it." My anger was still oozing out of me. "Thank you so much for the warning," I said bitterly. Now it was Penny who was hurting. "It's not fair, Michael. I had no idea there was something going on between the two of them." "I'm sorry, Penny," I said. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It's just that I'm being rather rude right now." She squeezed my hand. "It's okay, Michael. I can only imagine how you're feeling." I stood up. "I have to go," I told her. "I have to go back there and find out what's really going on." "You're not going to do anything rash, are you, Michael?" "No, I just need to get some answers." She squeezed my hand. "Please let me know what's going on, Michael, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help." I thanked her and walked back to my car. As I drove back to my house, I was dreading what was coming. I pondered all the questions I wanted to ask her and tried to anticipate her possible reaction. I expected tears, denials, and angry words. How would I answer them? And what about Frank? What if he was still there? I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my system. When I walked through the kitchen door, Melanie must have heard me because she came out to meet me. She was wearing a robe. Her hair was wrapped in a towel. "You're back early," she said cheerfully. "How was the match?" "It rained all over the place," I said in a curt voice. "Oh, I'm sorry you didn't get to play," she said. "I bet Penny was disappointed." I just stared at her. I didn't want to have a meaningless conversation. "I got a call about the rain right after we left," I said quietly. She blinked, but her expression didn't change. "I went back to the house," I told her, my heartbeat quickening, "and I saw you with Frank." Of the many scenarios I'd thought of, Melanie's reaction was the most unpredictable. "I'm sorry you had to see that," she said calmly. "Is that all you have to say?" I asked incredulously. "You're cheating on me and you're only sorry that I witnessed it? Aren't you even going to say you regret screwing him? How long has this been going on? Don't you have any explanation?" She crossed her arms over her chest and sighed. "Sit down, Michael," she said, pointing to the dining room table. "I'd rather stand," I said angrily. "Suit yourself," she said, and sat down in a chair. I stood, stunned by her complete lack of response. "Look, Michael, we were going to tell you soon anyway, but I think this is only going to speed up the timetable a little bit. I'm leaving you. Frank and I love each other, and I'm going to move in with him. We'll get married as soon as the divorce is final." I decided to sit down. I didn't want to risk falling over. Before I could think of what to say, she jumped up and said, "Wait here," after which she disappeared back into our bedroom. She returned a few moments later, clutching a stack of papers in her hand. She held them out to me across the table. "This shouldn't be too bad for you," she said. "I don't even want any alimony from you. I've taken all the money out of our savings account, but it's only fair since I'm leaving you the house. It's a much better offer than you'll get if we go to court, but I'll go along with it if you sign the papers and let us all live our lives." I looked at the stack of papers. It was a divorce petition. "You've already been to a lawyer?" I wondered. "What about our marriage? What happened to the last 10 years we spent together?" "I'm so sorry, Michael. It wasn't something I planned. It just happened. Just accept it." "Accept it?" I screamed. "Accept that my loving wife is having that asshole Frank Calhoun in our own bed? To accept that our marriage ended like that? She's up." "I'm disappointed, Michael. I was hoping for a more mature response from you." She turned and walked back to the bedroom. I sat at my desk, looking at the divorce petition lying in front of me and trying to figure out what was going on. If anyone had asked me that morning, I would have told them that I loved my wife and that we had a strong marriage. This afternoon, I find out that she is leaving me for another man. It's like cognitive dissonance. In the silence, I heard a cell phone buzz and then scraps of conversation. "He saw us, about as you'd expect. That would be good." When I returned, Tho was fully dressed and carrying an overnight bag and makeup kit. "Now that you've put the matter to bed, I'm not going to stay here tonight. Frank's coming to pick me up. We'll come back Monday when you're at work and get the rest of my stuff." "So you're leaving just like that?" "That's the way it's supposed to be," she said. "Good," I said bitterly. "What am I supposed to tell our friends?" She sighed. "Look, Michael, Frank and I haven't done anything wrong, and we're not going to hide like criminals. We're going to continue to have an active social life. In fact, we're probably going to a reception at Eden Point tomorrow night. You won't have to explain anything to anyone because they'll find out anyway." At that moment, a buzzer sounded outside. Melanie looked out the window. "Frank's here," she said. "I'm leaving." As she closed the door, she looked back and looked at me. "Just sign the papers, Michael. The sooner you do it, the better it will be for all of us." After that, she left. I don't know how long I sat there. Emotions rushed through me like the cars of a train rushing by. One minute I was seething with anger, the next I was remembering happy times and full of sadness. I told myself that I had treated her like a queen, and then I thought, what have I done to make her go away? "I'm better off without her," I repeated, until loneliness overwhelmed me. The ringing of my cell phone startled me, and I quickly answered it. Subconsciously, I think I was hoping to hear Melanie's voice, but it was Penny. "What's up, Michael?" she asked. "Not so good," I replied. She walked away from me. "I heard," she said. "You heard?" I was surprised. "Where?" How? I'm sorry, Michael, she said sadly. Frank was bragging about it at the club. Oh, shit, I thought to myself. It's already started. On Sunday, I called the captain of our men's team. There was no way I was going to show up there. I'm sorry, Joe, I told him. You're going to have to cut me out of the lineup today. I've got some personal issues that need to be dealt with. Yeah, I heard that, he said sympathetically. I'm sorry. Good luck, buddy. I thanked him, but I knew all I had to look forward to was more bad luck. I spent the whole day without leaving the house. I think I was hiding, although it pained me to admit it. There were sports programs on TV, but I wasn't paying attention. My thoughts kept going back to my marriage to Melanie. Where had it all gone wrong? At what point did she fall out of love with me? I was sure she loved me when she got married right out of college. We were steadily together throughout our senior year of college. I asked her to marry me during Christmas break. She was majoring in health and physical education, and whenever my fraternity brothers saw her in her gym clothes, it was uncomfortable for me. She had that combination of irresistibility, trimness, and sexiness that was impossible to resist. I gave up trying the minute I met her. We fell into married life easily. I got a great job in Atlanta, and she found a job as an instructor in an aerobics class. After a few years, we saved enough money for a down payment on a house and found exactly what we were looking for in a brand new complex called Eden Point. I thought we were really happy here in Eden Point. I got a few promotions in my company, and Melanie decided to run her own business. By then, we had enough money to rent space for her studio in one of the small shopping centers in the area, and her business was doing very well. Our savings account was growing. We made a lot of friends and acquaintances, especially in Eden Point, and we even talked about having children in a year or two. Our sex life had calmed down a bit, but it didn't surprise me. I was busy with work, and daily Pilates training would tire anyone out. Thinking back on it, I began to realize that things had really slowed down in the last 6 months, although I hadn't noticed it at the time. I also remembered that Melanie seemed a little distracted at times, like she was in another world. But when we made love, it felt better than ever to me, and I thought Melanie felt the same way. Obviously, I was wrong, and I mentally kicked myself. How could I have been so blind to not realize that she was involved with someone else? How could I not realize that she had fallen out of love with me and had fallen in love with Frank Calhoun? The only thing I could realize was that when you love someone and trust them, you don't look for signs of betrayal and deceit. No, I thought sardonically. You just have to wait until you get a backhand. On Monday, I went to work early so that I could get there before I started. Around 9 o'clock, I called my attorney's office to make an appointment. When the secretary asked about the purpose of the appointment, I didn't want to get into the subject of Melanie and me, so I told her that I needed to make some changes to my will. When she got back on the line, she told me I could come right after lunch. When I got to the law office, I was met in the lobby by Jonathan. He had been a classmate of ours back in our college days, and when Melanie and I decided to make our wills, I went to see him. After we sat down in his office, he looked at me with concern. Is everything okay, Michael? I understand you need to change your will. Isn't one of you and Melanie sick? Thank you for your concern, Jonathan, but it's not that bad, I told him. Then I handed him the papers Melanie had given me on Saturday. As he read them, he clucked his tongue to himself. When he finished, he looked at me. I'm sorry to hear about this, Michael. Do you think there's no chance of reconciliation? I don't think so. She's already moved out of our house and moved in with her boyfriend. She said they plan to get married as soon as our divorce is final. He shook his head. I never expected that to happen. You two seemed like the perfect couple. Then his expression changed and his voice took on a professional tone. Given these circumstances, I advise you, as your legal advisor, to sign this agreement immediately. Just erase 10 years of marriage just like that? I said bitterly. He shook his head patiently. In matters like this, Michael, you have to stop thinking with your heart and start thinking with your head. I think Melanie has made you a very generous offer, much better than you would have gotten if you had decided to fight against it. Part of her motivation may be guilt, but I'm willing to bet that the main reason is to give you an incentive to agree quickly so she can marry her new man. While that may make it seem like you're giving in to her now, the truth is that if your marriage falls apart, that's the best you can hope for." I knew he was right. Hell, after what she'd done, I didn't want to stay married to her anyway, and yet it felt like she and Frank had beaten me at a game I didn't even realize I was playing. Jonathan's tone became sympathetic again. "Look, Michael, I know the lawyer Melanie hired. If you sign, we can file this settlement agreement in court very quickly. It'll solidify what she's offering. Then, if she decides she made a mistake and wants to come back, and if you're willing to take her back, you'll have 30 more days to back out of the divorce." I knew that wasn't going to happen. "Can I borrow your pen?" I asked. Back at the office, I headed straight to HR. I needed to make a lot of changes to my health insurance, my retirement savings plan, and a host of other benefits that pertain to spouses. The clerk who helped me must have done this a lot because he was able to fill out all the forms I needed in a short amount of time. As I signed them, I glanced at him and saw that he was looking at me. "Guess I won't need to make an announcement in the office now," I thought, ironically. On my way home that evening, I stopped at a nearby restaurant and picked up dinner. When I got home, I discovered that Melanie had been there during the day and had packed everything she wanted. Of course, all of her makeup was gone, but I was surprised to find that some articles of clothing remained. However, when I examined them more closely, I realized that they were things she no longer wore. Guess I'll manage to drag them off to Goodwill, I thought grimly. Further investigation revealed that the bedroom wasn't the only place she had raided. Missing was our good china, along with most of the serving pieces we had received as wedding gifts. Also taken from the kitchen, I noticed, was some utensils and our set of good carving knives. Several pieces of furniture were missing, and when I walked into the room, I saw that most of our CD and DVD collection was gone as well. As I looked through our belongings, I noticed that she had left our wedding album untouched. Somehow that depressed me more than anything else she had taken with her. It was as if she wanted to erase all the memories of her life with me. I went back to the kitchen and stashed the food I had bought in the refrigerator. I had no appetite left after discovering her intrusion. I made a mental note to myself to change the locks. Damn it, how does one go from happily married to a single divorced man in 3 days? I asked myself. It all seemed so damn unfair. I spent the next week in virtual isolation, getting to work early every day and leaving late. Otherwise, I would be alone in the house. The humiliation of having Frank Calhoun steal my wife was excruciating, and the fact that there was nothing I could do about it was almost unbearable. I confess I had fantasies of attacks with a baseball bat or brass knuckles, sometimes dreaming of hired assassins and car bombs. But then I came back to the real world. Am I really going to ruin my life just to get revenge on a skirt-chasing scoundrel and a wife who can't keep her legs shifted? By Friday, I decided it was time to come out of my cocoon. I hadn't done anything wrong, and I had no reason to hide. I called Penny. "Hey, partner, don't we have a tennis match scheduled for this weekend?" I asked, trying to sound upbeat and positive. "Oh, Michael, I'm so glad to hear from you," she said quickly. "I've thought about calling you many times, but I thought maybe you'd prefer to be alone for a while." "Thank you, Penny," I replied, softening my tone. It had been a rough week. I went on to tell her everything that had happened. Then I asked her what was going on at Eden Point that I'd missed. She spoke evasively and vaguely for a few seconds before admitting that our situation had become a topic of conversation in the section. "You'd think they didn't have anything better to discuss," I said sharply. "Maybe they do," Penny allowed. "But Frank and Melanie aren't making it easy. They've been socializing at the club every night since last Saturday. Frank brags almost openly about winning best man, and Melanie hangs on him like a lovesick schoolgirl." I could hear the anger in her voice. "It's just disgusting, Michael. I dropped her Pilates class right away and told her I couldn't be her friend anymore," she said. Her loyalty made me feel a little better. "What about the others, Penny? What are they saying?" I asked. "I think it's what you'd expect, Michael. There are some who are very unhappy with Frank and Melanie, and they try to avoid the lovers as much as possible. There's also a group that always hangs out with Frank. They all extol his skills, if you know what I mean. But for most people, it's just a sad, awkward situation, and they try to stay out of it as much as possible." Mentally, I knew that would be the case, But part of me wanted the community to tar and feather Frank and Melanie and get them out of town on the train, but I was determined not to let frustration hold me back. Anyway, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life on the run, I told Penny. We have a game scheduled for Saturday, and if you don't mind, I'm going to take the court with my partner, I told her. I'm glad, Michael, she told me fervently. You can count on me. I purposely arrived at the tennis courts a little late, so as not to talk about topics I didn't want to discuss. It didn't help much. As I approached the tennis pavilion, I felt the stares of my neighbors and teammates. I could understand their curiosity, but I still couldn't stand the feeling. Upon seeing me, the captain of our mixed doubles team ran up to me. Michael, I'm really sorry. The second team changed their lineup at the last second, and some matches have already started, so I can't change anything. If you don't want to play, I understand. What are you talking about, Mary? I asked. I don't understand. It's Frank, she said. You and Penny have to play against Frank and his partner. Oh, shit, I thought. That's the last thing I wanted to do. At that moment, Penny walked over, and when she realized what was going on, her face went pale. She took me aside and whispered, We don't have to do this, Michael. There's nothing wrong with it. We'll just be recorded as a loss, and we'll play someone else next week. No! I said so loudly that Penny jumped. I'm not going to hide from that bastard for the rest of my life. I'm going to have to face him, and it could start right now. Penny gave me a concerned look, but I turned back to Mary. It's okay, I told her. Penny and I are going to play. It was a massacre. I played worse than ever, and my obvious emotions affected Penny as well. Frank, on the other hand, was really all in, and his powerful, rumbling ground strokes were burning the net like RPG rounds. To make matters worse, he was constantly taunting me throughout the match. Come on, Michael, you can hit it harder, he yelled after I delivered a weak shot that resulted in him scoring the ball for us. Another time he shouted, Even your wife can hit harder. Oh, wait, my bad, you don't have a wife. I was just mad. To add insult to injury, our little contest drew a crowd, and I looked up to see Melanie standing at the fence. To her credit, she flinched at some of Frank's comments, but never once looked in my direction. At one point, I played a weak second serve over the net, and Frank sent it straight at Penny. The ball bounced off her shoulder and almost knocked her down. I rushed to the net with my racket in hand, ready to decapitate the bastard, but Penny grabbed my arm and begged me not to fly over the net to him. It was only fair, she said. I'm fine. I'm not hurt. It's just part of the game.
I looked at him with anger in my eyes while he pretended to tie his shoelaces. Finally, I returned to my position in angry frustration.
The final score was 6-2, 6-1, a humiliating defeat. Gritting my teeth, I walked to the net to shake hands with my opponents. Frank's partner seemed embarrassed by his display and apologized to me while shaking my hand. Frank, however, just walked over to us and, without bothering to extend his hand, said, It was all a lot of fun. Let's do it again the next time you feel like getting beaten up. Then he turned meaningfully, walked over to Melanie, and kissed her hard over the waist-high fence. I don't know what Penny saw in my face, but she grabbed my hand and pulled me off the court. He's trying to provoke you, Michael. He wants you to start a fight with him. Don't take it personally. Please, for my sake. I sat down on the bleachers, and someone handed me a cup of ice water. I took a few sips and then poured the rest over my head. I couldn't have felt worse than I did that day. I apologized to Penny for playing such a bad game, and even though she objected, I got in my car and drove home. Throwing my clothes in the hamper, I dragged myself into the shower and let the water cascade off me for half an hour. When the water finally cooled off, I climbed out, wiped myself down, and flopped onto the bed, angry and annoyed. I knew why I'd lost. I'd let Frank get to me. That knowledge only made me feel worse. He had gotten to me, and he had also gotten to Melanie, though obviously in a different way. Still, the result was the same. Turn a loser like Frank into a big winner. I swore to myself that I wasn't going to take any more insults from Frank or Melanie. I was going to find a way to retake the initiative against both of them. Now all I had to do was figure out a way to accomplish that. I lay back on the bed and thought about what my old tennis coach used to tell me. Play to your opponent's weaknesses. It sounded good in theory, but how could I apply it to this situation? I know myself. When I start working on a problem, my brain keeps attacking it even when my mind shifts to other tasks. In fact, I've often found that if I don't think about the problem for a while, when I come back to it, the solution is in plain sight. That's what happened in this case. I pondered the task for a while and then set it aside to spend most of Sunday doing yard work that I had previously neglected. By that night, I was so tired that falling asleep was not a problem. When I got to work the next day, I realized I had a possible solution. It will probably be expensive, I thought to myself, but if it works, it will be worth it. About mid-morning, I called one of our top salesmen. "Hi, Jerry," I said as I walked up to him. "Any chance of having lunch with you today? My treat." "Sure, Michael, especially if it's your treat. We met at the grill bar, which I know is a little rundown, but it's got great food." After we ordered, Jerry looked at me. "Hey, Michael. I was sorry to hear about you and Melanie. I thought things were going well with you guys." "Yeah, me too, Jerry. Me too. But really, that's why I wanted to talk to you." "Sure, Michael, I'm happy to help in any way I can." "Okay, Jerry, here's my question. When you're entertaining your best clients, have you ever had to use an escort?" He gave me a weird look. "No, Michael, absolutely not. It's against company policy, and I would never do it." I leaned across the table to him. "Jerry, this is not a company issue, and we're not here on business. This is strictly personal, if you know what I mean." He stared at me for a few seconds, and then a light flashed in his eyes. "Oh, I see," he said. "I guess it's been a long period of being broke for you because of having a wife and being out of the dating game and all that for a long time." He paused, then leaned toward me. "Sure, I know one of the best services in town. But listen, Michael, they only cater to the biggest clients, you know? Their girls are incredible, but I think they might be way out of your price range." I smiled at him. "Let me worry about that. Just tell me how to contact them and what to expect." And he did just that over burgers and beer.